at the Graton Day Labor Center, we started we're almost about 5 years in existence right now. We had 3 years organizing on a street corner with day laborers. We organized day laborers. And we have about almost 2 years in our actual labor center, which was the goal of our organization from the beginning. But we didn't have land at that time, so we had an organized process in a small town in rural Northern California, west of Santa Rosa. And so that's where we started our organizing. We had a job hiring process, how we distributed our work, and a few services, English classes, health services, occupational health and safety trainings going on at that same time. And we still have those things, we still have those same services, but there's a big difference in having your center and being on a corner where the corner was a little bit more loose-knit. And I think when you have a center, you have the ability to really concretize the work you're doing. So one of the main points I think I would say in general is with organizations having space to organize out of. Like, space is key to getting to know people, to develop relationships, and also just to have a proper place where organizing and services can take place. We, as a labor center, Hillary was up there, and she represents another worker center in San Francisco. We're all part of a national network of day labor centers, about 46 centers throughout the country who base themselves on popular leadership, kind of direct democratic processes, and leadership development. And so we all work together. We've learned from them a lot, and they've learned from us. But we walk, as labor centers, we walk the line between being a service provider and being a community-based organization. But we have to be very clear that our members, their primary reason for being present is employment. It's work. It's getting paid, you know, and we have to be very clear with that, where I think a lot of time with community organizations, you can organize around an issue and you can recruit members. We honestly don't recruit members in the, especially the Latino community, which for me is a difficult thing because I like to recruit, I like to agitate and all that stuff, but we don't necessarily do that because if we bring more workers into our labor center, that's more unemployment. You know, that's more people looking for work, and our numbers are already low in terms of work and high in terms of workers right now. So we walk that line between providing services but also organizing our members. We try to base ourselves more on a mutual aid model as opposed to a charity-based model, because what we kind of understand with charity is that it's one group giving and another group receiving, and that doesn't necessarily change the power structure in our community or in our society. It makes one person have the resources and the other person receive the resources, and we would love to kind of create a more level playing field where people are working together in order to share those things, and also try to avoid paternalism as well, especially when you're working with the immigrant community and people are coming into the country for the first time, maybe not knowing the ropes, not knowing the ways. Those who do have the resources or know or have been through the system or grown up here, I've seen it, and I'm probably guilty of it myself, but we fall into paternalistic relationships with the people we're serving. And that's, and it comes, you know, it might come from good intentions and so forth, but it doesn't change those relations in our society or in our organizations. We organize and we try to develop leaders because we're trying to grow power. And I know a model that PILA has taken up, and I think Mujeres Unidas y Activas also, is the idea that we start with the individual, we try to develop ourselves as individual, and then we move to the organization, our participation in the organization, and making sure our organization is strong. And from there, we step into our communities, so we promote that civic participation and get people involved in creating change, not only in the organization, but in their community. So it starts with the individual, goes to the organization, and then the community. You know, it's kind of a three-step process. But essentially, part of the importance of going beyond service providing, in my opinion, I was speaking with an organizer up in Santa Rosa the other day, and he was using this Martin Luther King quote, and he says that Martin Luther King said it, love without power is mere sentimentality. Love without power is mere sentimentality. So love, it's a great sentiment, and it might say we're preoccupied with the poor, we're preoccupied with poor people, we have, you know, this is an issue to us. But as long as it stays an issue and we're not trying to build power around it, then we're not creating structures where people can actually be. It's a good sentiment to have, but if we're not trying to build power where people can control their circumstances, then it remains a sentiment, and that doesn't mean we're trying to eradicate poverty. We might poverty might be a preoccupation for us, but that doesn't mean we're trying to eradicate it. So we're trying to empower people. We define power as being the ability to control circumstances. The power is the ability to control circumstances. So we look at that on a individual level. Do our members have the ability to control circumstances within the confines of the Day Labor Center? And then also on a community level, does our organization, are we a power player in the community, and can we control circumstances beyond our center? So it is about power, and it's trying to change those relationships that has one group giving and another receiving. It's trying to create that level playing field. In theory, and like I said, theory is very different from practice, so it's not, we don't have a non-hierarchical perfect structure that we function under, but we're trying to build towards that. The way that we've learned that we can empower workers to have control over their circumstances within the confines of the center is having a very direct democratic process. We have 2 general assemblies a week, and where our members decide on everything. And sometimes it's ridiculous. It's like, if I want to go out on party on a Friday night, I got to ask the General Assembly. No, but it gets to that point sometimes where you're like, wow, this is kind of ridiculous. But we're trying to formulate that democratic process in a very direct way, and it's got to be real. It's got to be sincere. And it's not this kind of United States idea of democracy where we say we love democracy and then our number one ally is Saudi Arabia or something like that. It's like it's trying to talk democratic and be democratic in the best way we know how, and that's through the General Assembly. So and we say we are either very democratic and therefore good and great, or we are overly democratic and therefore ridiculous, because we're always coming up with one rule and then having to change it. But that's part of the experiment in democracy, is seeing what works and what doesn't. And if it doesn't work, we'll try it and then we'll change it. But it comes from the proposals that the workers put forth. That's the wages that we go out for. That's who's gonna wash dishes at the end of the day or mop the floor. That's who's gonna, are we allowed to play cards at the center, or dominoes? Whatever. All these things have to come out because there's conflicts going on always. There's internal contradictions always happening within the center, and we need to find our way to work through them. And make sure that when a decision comes up, it's not something that's imposed. Like, I'm a staff member, I'm an outreach coordinator, so I should not be imposing. A lot of times I might not even agree with rules that come out of the assembly, but we need to respect them because that's the desires of the majority. So that's in a very effective way, not only in making sure the workers are controlling their circumstances, like we said, and circumstances aren't being imposed on them, but also their voice is validated. There's very few institutions in our, I can't speak for the country or the state, but at least in our county, where you can enter and your voice is validated. You have a piece in creating a decision that's going to affect your livelihood, your family, and your general well-being. As far as I know, there's very, very few organizations. I don't think the church is necessarily a democratic association. The school system, even in our homes and our families, there's not too much democracy going on. So it's very important and special to have that space where you can have your voice validated. And you have a voice to speak up, or you can choose to remain silent if you'd like to. We don't pressure people into that either. So that's very important in establishing relationships, establishing trust, and also having processes that have come from the base and not been imposed. So that's why we do the work we do. Employment, like I said, is number one, but while people are waiting for work, they have English classes, we have health promoters, we have dialogues about anything. It can be from homophobia to machismo to domestic violence to mental health to, we're trying to integrate like acupuncture and massage if we can, Ayurvedic healing, which I don't even know what it is, but we're learning about it. And these are mental, a lot of things, with unemployed people, with immigrant people, we're dealing with a lot of mental health issues. So finding our way how to relieve stress physically and mentally is key to the work we do in creating a family setting where people are comfortable entering the center and coming in. Challenges that we've faced are many. and like I said, it's not, you know, I could paint it and make it sound like roses and strawberries and everyone's giving hugs and high fives, but the reality is different. And I think we have a beautiful thing in our midst and in our hands, but there's always internal conflicts, contradictions between staff, workers, organization, community, all these contradictions we need to be working through. So part of it is having a healthy critique, self-critique, and then critique about what's around us. You always got to carry that self-critique as individuals and then as an organization, how to work through these contradictions. I know one thing we talked about with PILA a lot was how we define a leader. A lot of times our leadership, I think we base it on irrelevant leadership models that are possibly from the past, maybe from the old unionist movements where it's kind of like soapbox, belt buckle type organizing where you get up and you're the leader, so you speak out to the masses and the masses will follow you. If that works, that's fine. We haven't found it to work in our circumstances, and it might be in a lot of the organizations where we're talking about, we're trying to build hierarchical non-hierarchical organizations, so that might be an irrelevant leadership model or something that doesn't conform to how we're doing it. Leaders come in different ways. It might be folks who do community service projects and are always out there with a shovel, you know, working in the community. It might be people who are organizing organizational parties and they're the ones taking the steps. And it might be people who are doing public speaking, facilitating assemblies, or involved in political education or health promoter services. Our goal of our organization is that one day the workers run the processes at the center. You know, so basically, the power's in the workers' hands, and we say that. So we would love a bottom-up process, but as it is right now, we are still top-down, and I think we are aware of it, and the relations between top and bottom are not completely, you know, out of whack, but we still are. You know, we have to say it, that we still run a top-down process, and we would love to be more non-hierarchical in general, more horizontal. And then like what I was referring to also in terms of paternalism, not only amongst the organization, but people who come and offer classes or want to volunteer with the organization, with Latino people. We've seen that, and we try to avoid it to the best of our ability because it's not a way for humans to feel great about themselves when they feel they're, you know, being treated as inferior, even if the intent is correct and good. Our successes come from, one, like I said, creating a space where people are comfortable to come into. Conflict resolution, individuals, we have a process where we sit down. If two individuals are going at it, we have a process where we sit down, each person gives their side, and then we try to come to a mediation process. And also conflict resolution within our workers, especially with dealing with the Latino community. Having unemployed people in one place, you can have regionalism, you know, where people come from the south of Mexico, they kick it together. People from the north, people from the west kind of congregate into where they're from, their towns, and so forth. So I think we've done a great job of having a place where people feel comfortable, and we see that crossing of regions. I could talk for days about the solidarity of workers and the need to come together and camaraderie, but you know, what we found out is like one of the key points for creating that regional cohesion or that immigrant cohesion or worker cohesion is like it's volleyball. You know, it's like for me that's been key. Like just having people, or the chessboard, or the guitar, like music, art, and culture and sports do a lot more in terms of creating unity amongst workers than my endless speeches about worker solidarity, right? And so we come to learn that quick. I think we have a strong base that's willing to mobilize. You know, a couple weeks ago there was a protest outside the federal building against Sheriff Arpaio of Arizona. So two organizations from the city were present, and then we brought about 20 workers. So we have a worker base that's ready and open to mobilizing for different actions, political actions, wage claim actions, and so forth. We've integrated workers into the board of directors, so it's community members, activists, and board members who are on the board of directors, you know, which is important. So we create more of a horizontal structure. And we have, you know, we're trying to engage in political dialogues, health promoters, all these types of development processes, which will make for, greater human beings and greater societies, right? So that's what we're trying to get to. And part of it is just activating people who might not have been active outside of their home or outside of their church or so forth, having people be active in their communities and kind of giving meaning to life,